Hi, I'm Jennifer Stevens, Director of the Residential Colleges Office in the UTLC and co-chair of UNCG's High Impact Practices Committee, or HIPC for short. There's much to do and consider when developing courses for inclusion in Minerva's academic curriculum, but designing new courses or revising existing courses presents opportunities for considering how best to engage students for self-directed, meaningful, and resonant learning. In this presentation, the HIPS committee highlights best practices from select high-impact practices that can be incorporated into courses across Minerva's academic curriculum, regardless of competency. Before jumping into the types of high-impact practices you might consider incorporating into your MAC courses, we'll start with a brief introduction about what constitutes a high-impact practice. Based on the work of George Koo with AAC&U, high-impact practices, or HIPs, are specific institutionally structured teaching and learning practices and student experiences positively associated with deep student learning, persistence, and student satisfaction. AAC&U recognizes 11 of these structured teaching and learning practices and experiences as HIPs, all with some shared characteristics. In each HIP, facilitated learning extends beyond the classroom. Strategies and processes are put in place for meaningful interactions between faculty and students. Students have opportunities to collaborate with people from diverse backgrounds and with diverse perspectives, and students receive frequent and substantive feedback. When delivered with high quality, students see gains in academic success measures and feelings of satisfaction and connectedness. For more information on the research supporting the inclusion of HIPs broadly and each HIP specifically, please visit utlc.uncg.edu/HIPs. From the research, we know that students show the greatest gains by participating in 2 or more HIPs throughout their college experience. However, many of our students often have to self-select participation in HIPS experiences, leaving some students without the opportunities HIPS provide. By selecting 1 or more HIPs to incorporate into your own courses, we can increase access to these high-impact opportunities. Hundreds of UNCG students enroll in immersive learning communities at UNCG each year, engaging in integrative living and learning experiences that help students build connection between themselves and their peers, faculty and staff, and interdisciplinary content. While linking your course with others to create a learning community may not be possible, there are best practices that can be borrowed from this intensive, high-impact practice. For example, as you build your course, look for opportunities to integrate co-curricular experiences into the course as synchronous learning activities or as related opportunities that students pursue outside of class. These asynchronous co-curricular experiences can be required course elements as long as the co-curricular opportunity is accessible to all students and accounted for in the credit hour and grading structure of the course. Or these co-curricular experiences can be offered as extra credit opportunities. HIPS research shows us that students' sense of belonging and connectedness results in many positive outcomes. Think of opportunities for community building and ways that you may get to know your students. At the very least, UNCG students tell us that a faculty member knowing their name makes a big difference in how they feel about a course and how they ultimately perform in the course. Finally, as you put together your semester outline, think about overarching themes, big questions, and large concepts that extend across disciplines. How can you arrange the content of your course, and what types of applied learning activities can you incorporate to help students make personal and interdisciplinary connections that will stick long after they leave your course?
Hi, my name is Emily Worsma. I'm an Associate Director with the New Student Transitions and First Year Experience. As part of the HIPS committee, I represent First Year Experience seminars, as well as Common Intellectual Experiences, which is the one I'm going to be talking about with you all today in particular, focused on how we can help you all to support your new Minerva's academic curriculum courses. All first-year students receive a Kecker Success Guide created by a leader in the field of college student development. You can see a preview of the planner portion of the Success Guide, but in addition to this, there's also campus resource information, the academic planner and calendar that you see before you now, UNCG-specific traditions and commonly used terms, worksheets, and tools to help your students grow academically, personally, professionally, and more. Next up, the component I want to talk about is the Kecker speaker visit. So all first year students have the opportunity to meet and hear from the developer of the Kecker Success Guide, Julian Gordon, during a campus visit each fall. Through presentations and workshops that he puts on, he engages our first year students in the campus community. The third component is the Kecker Success Series. Throughout the academic year, new students engage in a series of collaborative programs focused on student success. Various campus partners, faculty, and staff across UNCG's campus develop and facilitate these programs to help new students take initiative and begin taking steps towards their future success. The fourth and final component is the Kecker Common Experience Scholarship. So first year students have the opportunity to reflect on their Kecker Common Experience by competing in an essay competition to demonstrate their personal growth and academic success throughout their first year. The winning essay is also then featured in the following year's Kecker Success Guide. So I know we just flew through the 4 components of the Kecker Common Experience, and I'm happy to connect further with anyone who would like to learn more. But the one key takeaway I want everyone to have is that all of your first year students are already actively engaged in this program. And there are easy ways to seamlessly integrate the Kecker Common Experience program into your current course to help your new students succeed and excel in your program. In addition to the Kecker Common Experience program, if you're looking to collaborate on other initiatives to help your first year students succeed at the G, that is what the FYE team is all about, and we are here to help you. I look forward to connecting with you soon, and thank you.
The great thing about writing is that it transcends curriculum. That is, regardless of the type of curriculum that our school is implementing, what changes are involved, and how students and teachers are impacted by that change, the ways that we learn to write and incorporate writing into assignments doesn't change all that much. The first key concept to consider is the difference between learning to write and writing to learn. Learning to write can be kind of formulaic, it can be kind of technical oriented, it can be practice, it can be learning the steps and mechanisms of discourse conventions, it can be grammar. Those are all concrete ways to think about learning to write, and we're all familiar with those. The other way to think about learning to write is actually writing to learn. The inverse of that is taking concepts or ideas that we experience in class as teachers, students, people, and writing is a way to process what we understand and don't understand. This is the idea that underlies any kind of discussion group online, or any kind of low stakes assignments or in-class writing assignments, or even writing for personal reasons, let's say journaling to process our ideas or feelings, or make sense of a situation that we don't understand. So this is a concept we're familiar with and employ regularly. Formally, you can think about adding it to your classes as a way to help students make sense of content. So that is, as you offer assignments or ideas or new areas for students to learn about, you can also assign smaller assignments that help them make sense of the content through writing. That is, rather than testing them on what they know, allow writing to be a space for them to figure out what they know and don't know, because often that's what writing reveals to us. Processing content in this way is best for students when it's a fairly low stakes assignment. That is, it's best if students feel comfortable taking a risk writing about what they think they understand and what they do understand, and having a place for them to make mistakes or possibly even get it wrong. If we don't have that freedom, then we tend to get caught up in writing for performance, and that's harder. It stifles the writing process, and often writers will shut down rather than open up and think about what they're learning and process what they're learning in that way. Low stake assignments can take several forms. As I mentioned, maybe journaling, free writing in class, responses and discussion boards, as long as they're graded and understood to be places not to demonstrate what you know, but instead demonstrate possibly even what you don't know. These are graded assignments that have point value, but aren't graded for correctness or thoroughness. They are essentially a participation grade. for levels of engagement rather than levels of perfection. Different from high stakes writing assignments that you're very familiar with, traditional essays or exams. Another key component about incorporating writing successfully into courses is giving students opportunities to revise their work. The key to good writing, as all of us know, is drafting and revising. So if we can get our students to participate in that process, or if we can require our students to participate in that process, then they are much more likely to produce better quality work. Opportunities for revision really can look like draft 1 in a peer review by fellow students, draft 2 revised based on peer review feedback, and then a final draft. So as a teacher, you're providing feedback on draft 2. Already the draft has progressed a little bit in this way because students have had time to see what someone else thinks of their work. Draft 2 gives you a place to intervene in the writing process. I'll say here too that I recommend never grading another essay. I don't know about you, but as a writing teacher, I've graded many essays, and they take a very long time. No matter how much I tell myself I'm not going to take a lot of time grading an essay, I always do. I've learned from experience and having many students that I have to give feedback to at one time that grading 70 essays in a week is just not practical. If it takes 45 minutes for me to grade each paper, I'm actually better off meeting with each student one-on-one and spending 45 minutes reading their paper out loud, or as much of that paper out loud as we can. They see how another human responds to their words on the page in real time. So as I read the paper out loud, we stop at any questions and say, well, I didn't really understand that. What did you mean there? Or did that sentence make sense to you? And they're shaking their head. The 45 minutes that you could invest in written feedback, often correction, which they often never take. Again, I've graded many papers, and I'm always surprised when students don't take the advice I've given them. Why I'm surprised, I don't know. But when I meet with them one-on-one and they see, like I said, in real time, how the essay is working or not working, they tend to understand more concretely why that paper doesn't work and what they need to do to respond and to change and to revise. I think that that's an effective way to spend time compared to the amount of time I spent responding on essays. So I share that with you. Another thing to consider is that if you're going to ask students to revise, I usually make revisions required. I compare essays literally in the compare feature in Word document, and I see what they've done between draft 1 and draft 2 and draft 2 and draft 3, and then I grade them accordingly. That is to say, that is part of the final grade. And grading is the last piece that we have to talk about here. Eventually you will have to give them a grade. I try to give process grades along the way for draft 1 and draft 2 and the peer review. And for the final essay, I give them a traditional grade for all of the quality of the work, the writing, the content, everything. So they get pass-fail credit along the way, as long as it's turned in on time, as long as it isn't a lame attempt. And then they finally get credit at the end for the quality. This gives them space to learn how to write better and process content at the same time. As students are processing content, they're actually learning to think through ideas. And it's important to consider that writing is thinking and thinking is writing. Those two are connected. That is a recursive process. So the more we write, the more we think of things, the more we think of things, the more we can write. As we write, we tend to be able to make sense of our ideas in words, in language, so that another human being can understand them. So one of the reasons that writing is so difficult for most of us is that not only is the writing hard, putting into words what we think we have in our mind, but it's actually getting a handle on what we have in our minds to then put into words. So writing and thinking are deeply related, and writing to learn taps into that process.
Hello and welcome to the UNCG High Impact Practices Committee PowerPoint slides on high impact practices. My name is John Sopper. I am the director of Grogan Residential College on campus, and I'm going to be talking today about the fundamental components of team-based learning as a teaching strategy. This is something that we use quite a bit in Grogan College. We use it in connection with, in combination, I guess I should say, with project-based learning, but they can be done independently. The first thing I think to think about and the place to begin from when you are considering what kinds of pedagogy to use in your own courses is to think long and hard about your student learning outcomes. Really the first step in adopting any teaching learning practice is to ask what you want students to learn, and then to consider which practices will be most effective in students learning what it is you want them to learn. In terms of team-based learning, a key question to ask at the outset is, what do you want students to learn that can be effectively learned by working in teams? Not everything that can be learned requires a team. So you want to be thinking about what you want them to learn that teamwork can effectively teach. Given that basic idea, I think one of the first things to think about when you're considering using team-based learning in your courses is that you need to be sure that there are significant problems that students can address in teams. In other words, you need to choose an assignment or to choose a task or activity in your classroom that is sufficiently complex and open-ended to benefit from collaboration, and where the answer is sufficiently unclear that one person cannot easily solve it alone. You want to avoid assigning collaboration or assigning people to teams to do things that they could just as easily and just as readily do and do just as well on their own. Is a team necessary? Will working through something as a team produce better outcomes? Those are questions to be asking yourself. Once you've decided that there are tasks, assignments, topics in the class that it is beneficial to work on in teams, then you want to start thinking about how you set teams up. And you want to be strategic about that. And here again, you think back to your student learning outcomes and what it is about teamwork and working in teams that you want students to learn. And that can help guide you with decisions about how you set the teams up to begin with. So for example, you might be interested in assuring that students have experiences of working in teams across diversities of ethnicity or of gender. Or you might be interested in designing teams that enable students to experience differences in strengths and talents. Other approaches you might take are working with different personalities or different learning styles. Sometimes faculty will have students do a psychological inventory of some sort, perhaps Myers-Briggs or the Strengths Finders process, and put together teams based on the combinations of strengths and combinations of personal styles or communication styles that individuals have in the classroom. None of these are the best or the right or the correct way to do it. You just have to be strategic in thinking about how the teams are composed and how that fits with your learning outcomes, with your subject matter, with your classroom. Sometimes students are allowed to create their own teams. Sometimes various forms of speed dating are used, where students set up projects or problems or topics on whiteboards, and they shop around, and different students collect under topics that they all like. Again, how you set up the teams is not necessarily, a one way to do it. It's that you need to be thinking about what sorts of strategies for constructing the teams fit with your goals. That said, another thing to think about and to plan when you're adopting team-based learning is that the tasks that the teams work on need to be sufficiently similar that the students have an interest in listening to, hearing about how different teams approach and how different teams answer or respond to the task or the assignment. These sometimes can be large projects, or they can be very small in-class exercises where different teams have to discuss and come up with an interpretation of something that was in an assigned reading, and then each team presents it. But the point here is that for students to be interested in what other teams are doing, and for them to be learning from and learning about the fact that there can be different approaches and different strategies taken to solve a similar issue or problem or task, and what it is you have the student teams working on has to be sufficiently similar in structure or content that they can see how different groups approach the same challenge in different ways. The next thing to think about is how our team's going to report out. I just finished saying that one of the purposes of team-based learning is for students to see the difference that working in teams makes, and so you want to create an interest in what other teams are doing and not just an interest in what one's own team is doing. So there also have to be opportunities in team-based learning for the teams to report out, to share their solutions, to share their thought processes, to share what the options that they didn't take, that sort of thing. And then another important component of team-based learning that I have used and found to be very effective is that you give structured ways for the members of each team to give each other feedback. I've done this through a form that students fill out where I preset categories of learning outcomes or different categories of ways of contributing to a team, and ask them to comment on each of their team members' performance. Both strengths and contributions, but also areas where the team member could have helped more, or things that the team needed that the team member might consider ways that they could provide. But these are anonymous. I collect them and I collate it and put it together and summarize it for each individual. They don't know who said what, but each individual member of the team does get a peer feedback report. And that can be very important in making sure that the teams come together and making sure that the teams are addressing the dynamics of group formation. So those are some important components, I think, of team-based learning. On my next slide, I'm going to share a few resources. Hello and welcome to the UNCG High Impact Practices Committee PowerPoint slides on high impact practices. My name is John Sopper. I am the director of Grogan Residential College on campus, and today I'm going to walk through some of the components of project-based learning. First and foremost, as with all teaching strategies, high impact or otherwise, it's always a good idea to start your thinking about adopting a strategy by thinking about what are your student learning outcomes. What do you want students to learn, and what will be the most effective way for them to learn it? And in terms of PBL or project-based learning, you want to ask yourself what you want students to learn that can be effectively learned by having them design and complete a major project that examines and responds to a challenging real-world problem. So that leads to the next important thing to consider, which is that typically PBL is built around a challenging real-world problem, meaning that you're asking students to investigate and address an open-ended question or a problem that they are going to attempt to solve, and that problem is something that is of concern beyond the classroom. a real world problem, so that what they discover and what they come up with is something that could potentially be applied, and someone other than the teacher, right, authentically cares about and could potentially benefit from the answer. Because of this emphasis on real world problems that are potentially applicable, PBL is often combined with community engaged learning, and in many cases there is a community partner who is a stakeholder in the solution that students develop. That's not always the case, but that makes a very convenient combination. In either case, community engaged or not, you want to be thinking about issues, problems, concerns that affect the world beyond the classroom. Given that, however, it's also important to underscore that in project-based learning, students exercise choice. It's important in designing what you do in your own class that the problems students work on are meaningful to them, and that students exercise some degree of choice regarding the problem or issue they address, the approach they take, and the form that the end product they present takes. So building on that point, you need to be thinking about project-based learning as a sustained form of inquiry. Projects in PBL should require sustained research and inquiry. Students must find and evaluate relevant data, perform analyses, and often critically examine and evaluate competing solution options. Given this, you also want to make sure that you're building in time. PBL projects typically require several weeks, or more often, in my experience, an entire semester to complete in stages. Another important thing to be thinking about and to build into a course if you're considering project-based learning is opportunities and time for feedback and revision. Build in drafts, build in faculty and also peer feedback and opportunities for ongoing revision. For example, you might include a project proposal form where students initially present an idea and they get feedback and revise that. Drafts of definitions of the problem, drafts of possible solutions, which they get opportunities to revise. Connected to this element of ongoing feedback and opportunities for revision is PBL pedagogy also emphasizes reflection, that students reflect on what they're doing, reflect on the decisions and choices they've made along the way, and have opportunities to think about the project as it's unfolding and about the choices that they're making. The last key point I think that is important to project-based pedagogy is that there is an end product that is made public. The solution that students come up with, the response that students recommend, their process, the research, right, their proposal, and their rationale for it is presented to an audience, and typically an audience that extends beyond the classroom. But making public is a key component of this pedagogy. The last important thing to think about is that project-based learning can be done individually, but it also lends itself well to being incorporated with team-based learning. So you can have teams of students developing projects where they investigate and where they craft solutions and present those solutions as teams. So that's a little bit about project-based learning. I've also included some resources on the next slide. There is an important center at Worcester Polytechnic on project-based learning that has a great deal of resources, as well as the Buck Institute for Education maintains a website on project-based learning that is oriented more towards K through 12, but is easily adapted to college level. That ends what I have to tell you about project-based learning. If you are interested in exploring it and want to chat with someone about it, again, my name is John Sopper, and I will be happy to tell you what I know. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Lee Phillips. I'm the Director of the Undergraduate Research, Scholarship, and Creativity Office, a unit within the University Teaching and Learning Commons here at UNCG. We're dedicated to promoting and supporting student success through mentored undergraduate research, creative inquiry, and other scholarly experiences. We're also dedicated to helping faculty become increasingly effective with mentoring undergraduate research and integrating research skills into courses and curricula. The reason we have this dedication is because we know that these types of experiences help students build the skills that are necessary to be successful both in and out of college. In particular, they learn how to think critically, how to solve complicated problems, and how to communicate the results of those inquiry. They also learn how to work in teams and how to develop important questions moving forward. Course-based undergraduate research experiences, or CUREs as they're often referred to, constitute one recent model for combating the limited accessibility to undergraduate research by introducing large numbers of students to research in the classroom. Since their introduction a few years ago, these inquiry-based classes have been growing in popularity with documented successful impact, predominantly in the STEM disciplines. We at UNCG have been working to expand their popularity to all disciplines and have made tremendous strides recently in the arts and humanities. A recent paper demonstrated that CUREs yield many of the same benefits as the traditional apprentice-apprentee model, while simultaneously broadening the impacts and promoting diversity and inclusion. One approach to implementing CUREs is through an assessment of your desired outcomes of the course. You have to work to identify the main goals by considering what do you want the student to know at the end of the course? What do you want the students to be able to do as they move to the next levels of learning? And through this, we build toward these end goals, but always start at the beginning and keep the process in mind the whole way through. So how do we develop research skills? Well, first of all, we have to break down the skill into its essence, and we have to focus on an explanation of this skill and provide examples of the skill for our students. These skills may include things such as discipline-specific skill sets, as well as ones that are transferable between disciplines and to other learning opportunities as well as to the workplace. The next phase in breaking this and developing these skills is to giving the students an opportunity to practice the skills, because practice is where we learn. We can't just explain and expect people to know how to do things. Practice, practice, practice is very important. And explaining just how the assignments will be evaluated is a good opportunity for us as instructors to help our students learn the process in a more intentional and meaningful way. So I recommend that we provide examples of good products as well as poor products. And if you're using a rubric to assess the product that you're asking for in the assignment, it's not a bad idea to provide the student with a copy of that rubric in advance and explain to them exactly how it works. So these practice opportunities or assignments, as we consider looking at it, what are we going to have our students do? Well, what's the skill that we want to develop? So in some cases, we may be trying to develop the capacity to read primary literature. So we provide assignments in that and guide the students through the reading of that literature. We may have applications of comparative literature, different interpretations, which is always a lot of fun and can create some interesting conversations and discussions within class. Sometimes we're trying to develop writing skills. Those writing skills are very important. So essays are important. Sometimes we want to develop that communication skill. So oral presentations is a good way of working towards that kind of development. What about data, or what about information, whatever your discipline is? So how do we collect it, and how do we process it, and how do we present it? So data visualization is something that's very important, and it's good practical experience, something that should be built upon in our classroom. There are different ways to go about doing that. So when we develop our course plan and our how we're going to implement these assignments into a course, one thing we might consider is, do we want to confront novel and important ideas? Do we want to collect and analyze original data? Do we want to apply our research to real problems, or do we want to work through hypothetical research problems? In any of these cases, my strong recommendation is that we work iteratively, because it's so much easier to have small steps than here it is, go do it. Another important thing to consider is the vehicle through which we're going to provide our students with the meaningful feedback. So my recommendation is that it be frequent, and that it be intentional, and it be meaningful for the student, and help the student develop those skills within the structure of the course and the learning outcomes that are desired. We want our students to work collaboratively with others. So that team nature of work is something that's so important, and the students should be able to identify that they can work with each other. It is a skill set that's important going forward. We also want to work with them through this process, helping the student to learn rather than forcing them to learn all at once, helping them to learn gradually. We're going to increase the students' ownership of the problem over time, and we're going to encourage our students to pose questions. And not only questions, but how do we answer these questions? So it's one thing to ask a question, it's another thing to know how to answer it. Some of the benefits I've already identified with respect to the ability to think critically and solve complicated problems and work in teams and communicate effectively in both written and oral fashion. These are very highly desirable skill sets that need to be developed. So that has a greater educational benefit, and it prepares them for success not only in the course that you're overseeing, but also the courses that they're going to take going forward. We have the improved, we see our students gain the improved ability to pose and frame research questions, and we see increases in information literacy, which is so critical in a world that's full of a lot of misinformation. When properly highlighted, our students are able to see how these skills are going to help them be successful here as a student at UNCG, as well as in their life after college, as they move on to the workplace and some even into graduate school and life thereafter. Other programs that the URSCO supports and includes are our Undergraduate Research and Creativity Awards, which provide students with stipends to work in the traditional mentor-mentee model of research and creative inquiry, and we provide these awards annually to students and faculty from all disciplines. We also have our annual celebration of undergraduate research and creative inquiry. It's the Thomas Undergraduate Research and Creativity Expo, which is held in the spring each year. And another thing we like to do is acknowledge the fantastic faculty here at UNCG who are mentoring undergraduates in research through our Thomas Undergraduate Research Mentor Award. You can visit us at utlc.uncg.edu/URSCO and see many of these offerings. And if you'd like some more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me at lee.phillips@uncg.edu.
UNCG offers a vast array of diversity and global learning programs throughout the year, including short and long-term study abroad programs. Additionally, a variety of diversity and global learning programs are available for integration into your own courses or to utilize as co-curricular extensions of your course. Please visit UNCG's HIPS website for information on these myriad opportunities. UNCG promotes academic service learning as a teaching method that links community action and academic study so that each strengthens the other. Each semester at UNCG, 30 to 50 designated service learning courses are offered across a variety of majors. To designate a course with a service learning marker, a faculty member must complete Form H provided by the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement, collect required signatures from their department head and dean for approval, and submit a syllabus that meets service learning standards. Students that participate in service learning courses complete 25 hours of service connected to their course content. They also participate in in-class activities and assignments that promote critical reflection related to their experiences in the community.
Hello, my name is Megan Walters and I serve as Associate Director for Career Development at UNC Greensboro. I'm going to talk to you today about internships, which is the component of the High Impact Practices Committee that I represent as a member of the CPD team. According to the Association of American Colleges and Universities, an internship is a direct experience in a work setting with supervision and coaching from professionals. The Career and Professional Development Team at UNCG can help you and your students manage the internship process if you would like our support. We know that many academic programs require internship. Many academic programs support internship as elective credit, and some academic programs say that internships are a great experience and encourage students to do it, but do not have components in their program to support internships for credit. We experienced three major questions from students, faculty, and employers around the idea of internships, and these are three points that I want to discuss today. One is about the difference between a credit-bearing or non-credit-bearing internship. If your department has the capability to support a student through academic credit internships, we absolutely support it. We know that a student experiencing an internship can help to supplement their learning in the classroom, and we know that many of you have avenues for which students can get internship credit. So we absolutely can support you, but we know that some of you have this taken care of. Another question that we get a lot is about the difference between a paid or an unpaid internship, and this is critical. Our team does not like to support unpaid internships. We know that there are fuzzy lines here, and we want to make sure that students are taken care of, that our institution is taken care of, and that our employers take care of themselves and continue, with positive reputations. So we encourage all of our employer partners to post paid internships, but when they are unable to pay, we require that they create an experience that a faculty member would feel comfortable giving academic credit for or supporting academic credit for. And for that to be true, the internship has to meet 7 different requirements that are developed by the Department of Labor. So we encourage you to take a look at that list of the 7 checks, and we're happy to talk through those checks with you and with your students. Finally, we know that primarily students are seeking internship opportunities through a pre-existing or advertised internship that they might find on a website or that they're familiar with from a particular company or industry. That is primarily how people are finding their opportunities, but there are also opportunities to create your own experience. So if a student is looking for something that's very specific, or if you are interested in a particular kind of internship for a student that we cannot find a posting for, we can work with you and our employer partners to look for opportunities that might be ideal for you and your students. Our team is here to support you. There are 4 major ways that career and professional development can support you and your students as you consider internship as a high impact practice for your course. Number 1 is through Handshake. Handshake is our online career management platform at UNC Greensboro. Primarily, students think of it as a job board or an internship board, and it certainly has that capability. It is the part of the program that I'm talking about today, but it has a lot of other uses. Handshake is the #1 source on our campus for internships. Through Handshake, UNCG students had access to more than 4,000 internship opportunities last academic year, and most of those opportunities had multiple seats. So even though there were 4,000 opportunities or internship postings, that could sometimes lead to 10 or 20 or 30 opportunities at a particular company. So there are lots of opportunities through Handshake. We certainly want students looking there when they need internship opportunities. Second, we can help you source internships. If you or your students are seeking opportunities that aren't currently posted on Handshake, or if you're looking for something in a particular industry that you see as underrepresented on Handshake, our employer relations team will get to work. We would love to work with you on your needs and interests and go to market. We want to talk to employers about providing opportunity to students. Next is classroom support. Our team can visit your classroom or develop assignments to supplement your existing curriculum. If you would like for our team to come to your class, or if you would like for someone on our team to help you support an assignment, you can either request a presentation through our online form, or you can contact me directly, and I will get our team to work for you. Finally, our team supports career readiness. Our career coaches can work one-on-one with your students as they build their application materials, they strengthen their brand, and they prepare for interviews. So at any point along the way, as people are preparing for internship opportunities, we can help. We want to help students directly, we want to help you directly, and we look forward to working with you. So please contact me directly if you would like support with your internship programming, and I am happy to connect you with a particular member of our team who can serve you best. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Vaughn Stewart, and I serve as the ePortfolio person on the High Impact Practices Committee. Here at UNCG, I'm the director of the Digital ACT Studio. ACT, by the way, stands for Action, Consultation, and Training. The Digital ACT Studio provides consultations, workshops, and faculty development for any digital media or design project. And I guess if I'm going to talk about ePortfolios, to start at absolute zero, an ePortfolio, when I'm talking about it, is really just a website that showcases a student's work done over a course or over the term of a project. If you go into many website editors and click on themes and look for your portfolio themes, they think you are a photographer and are just trying to showcase your work there. But I'm using ePortfolio much more broadly, more aligned with sort of how paper portfolios try to collect a bunch of student work together. ePortfolios do have an incredible potential to help cement student learning by providing a space for sort of the transformation and synthesis of what is a much longer experience over a semester or multiple semesters. Oftentimes, ePortfolios come at the end of things, towards the end of a term, but they aren't as effective when they're just tacked on as the very last thing to put all of these materials on a website. They work much better when they are scaffolded as part of a course to enable synthesis and reflection upon materials being created throughout the course. we know that that synthesis and reflection is crucial for that learning to really sink in. Largely, that synthesis and reflection comes from the fact that a good e-portfolio needs to make a coherent argument or present a coherent message to an audience. For students, that's rather challenging. They need to take all of this stuff that they've done and repackage it for a given audience. Sometimes they need to cut things or they need to contextualize certain things in order for that coherence to happen. When they do, they will necessarily be engaging in that synthesis and reflection. And it will also help them fashion a particular persona for themselves. That unified and coherent public professional persona that good e-portfolios create is key for student success. It really aids them as they communicate the value of their college learning to their community, both immediately, by creating a shareable website, and down the road by going through that process of finding the message that provides a sort of a narrative thread that binds together a wealth of disparate experiences that happened across a project or a course. A final strength I want to highlight in this very brief overview is that e-portfolios engage students in multiple modalities and literacies, requiring a digitally mediated representation of oneself and one's learning just by its very nature is sort of going to transform that content. Students are going to be challenged and stretched to think not just about the words they are putting up on the website, but also about the visual aspects, the spatial aspects, the organizational aspects that all come together and make something that is greater than the sum of its parts. There are also some common pitfalls that I just wanted to mention that I've encountered frequently in working with faculty and students on e-portfolios. As I mentioned earlier, some of the less effective e-portfolio integrations happen when it's just sort of the thing that's done in the last week of class just to make a website. There is some utility in that. I definitely see it. But I think that for me, I like to focus on the sort of that synthesis and reflection and how it really helps students apply what they've learned, and it really helps them sort of cement it. So it's better for that to happen, to have projects timed out and introduced earlier, so that sort of those mental processes of synthesizing and reflecting have time to work, and also so students who encounter any technical issues have time to seek out assistance. Also, as with many digital projects, much of the labor of creating an e-portfolio is sort of invisible, which can make people think that it doesn't take a long time to do. Make sure that if you are using an e-portfolio, that you're not just adding it on top of your course. You now have an extra assignment. Try to find space in your course in order to provide students time to invest in creating a good e-portfolio. The second major pitfall I encounter from the faculty perspective is that they often have an overconfidence in students' digital literacy. Nearly 20 years ago, the term digital native was coined to describe a generation that really doesn't need that much digital help. And the term and that idea sticks around today, but in the intervening 20 years, research after research sort of shows that that is not true, and we cannot treat students monolithically. Digital literacy is incredibly varied, and we can actually do some damage if we assume that, hey, these people are young and tech savvy and they'll figure this out. We can just end up reinforcing barriers to technological access that students have had for a while. So we need to be careful with thinking that students are able to do these projects and don't need things like explicit instructions on how to create a website. At UNCG, there is a whole host of support for e-portfolios and other digital projects and courses, places like the Teaching Innovations Office and Instructional Technology Consultants. But I'll talk about my shop right now. I am the director of the Digital Act Studio, as I mentioned. The Digital Act Studio is one of the multi-literacy centers on campus, along with the Speaking Center and the Writing Center. And that's probably the quickest way to explain it. We're like a writing center, but for digital projects. Students, faculty, and staff can bring whatever digital projects they're working on, whether it's a podcast, a video, website, infographic, slide presentations, social media posts, digital photography, etc. And they can have a consultation with a trained consultant on how to make that project more effective for a given audience. We're located on the lower level of Jackson Library, but also provide all of our consultation and workshop services online. In the Digital Act Studio, when I talk with faculty about doing a digital project in their courses, I often talk about providing an ecosystem of support. And what I mean by that is integrating multiple support and instruction materials. So usually this means that a workshop is scheduled where a representative from the Digital Act Studio will come in. For an e-portfolio, for example, we would present a workshop where we would talk about how to make an effective e-portfolio, to walk through some of the visual and design choices, how to create an argument across the entirety of it, the issues with structure. We often pair this with technical training on the particular platform that the faculty member has selected, whether it's WordPress, Weebly, Wix, Google Sites, what have you. We try to make these as interactive as possible and can tailor things to faculty requests. We also provide work days, which is where a consultant or multiple consultants from the Digital Act Studio will either come to your classroom, or the class can come to the Digital Act Studio space, or we can reserve a computer lab, and students have time to work on their projects, and the consultants will float around and help with any issues that arise. And they can also provide sort of brief feedback on projects overall. Our primary service for students is our consultation services. Students can sign up for a half-hour or an hour-long appointment in which they'll get feedback from a trained consultant on how to make that digital project more effective for a particular audience. Students can use the Digital Act Studio for a consultation at any point in the process of creating that project. So for an e-portfolio, if a student has absolutely nothing done and wants to talk with somebody to work through some brainstorming, some initial design choices or structure, they can have a consultation with absolutely nothing done. And we can also work all the way through to the end point. If somebody has sort of a finished draft and wants to get feedback on how to tweak it to make it better, they can have a consultation then as well. As I mentioned, all of our consultations can occur face-to-face when we are when our physical space is open in Jackson Library, but we also can do all consultations online using voice, video, and chat and screen sharing. I also know that many faculty who are doing digital projects may be doing them for the first time and have a lot of questions or want to walk through things like rubrics or their own course calendar and look at dates where deliverables might be due for an e-portfolio. I am always happy to meet with you and provide any advice, feedback, guidance, or training that you need. Feel free to email me at any time. If what you need is to have somebody walk you through the platform that you've chosen, I'm happy to do that for you. If you need somebody to look at a rubric that you've created and give you feedback on how to tailor that to your particular learning outcomes that you want to highlight, I'm also happy to do that. In all things in the Digital Act Studio, and this applies both to our interactions with students and faculty, we really want to be as helpful as possible. So feel free to ask, and we will try to help the maximum amount that we can. So I hope that your course designing goes well, and I hope that you feel empowered to try some new things and to take some risks. Please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or use DAX services for any ePortfolio or other digital media or design projects you have. Thanks.
Hi there, I'm Jenny Dale, and I'm the Information Literacy Coordinator at UNCG Libraries. I'm here to tell you a little bit about how the libraries can help you integrate HIPS into your MAC courses. Librarians work frequently with first-year seminars and experiences. We can provide information literacy sessions, which will be particularly important for those foundation courses, which have information literacy learning goals. We can also provide interactive library tours, online tools, and more. Librarians also work directly with many of the learning communities on campus. So for example, I work with Ashby and Strong residential colleges as their official librarian. I'm embedded in their research-intensive capstone course, and I help students who are in those courses as they're engaging in research on topics they care about. Writing-intensive courses and capstones are great candidates for library collaboration. Pretty much, if you have a class that has research involved, we can help you. We provide information literacy workshops tailored to specific research assignments for courses like this, and we can also work with you on research assignment design. Undergraduate research is a natural fit for libraries, and we support both student individual research projects as well as course-based undergraduate research experiences. So I recently worked with English 106, an introduction to poetry class that had a course-based undergraduate research experience involved. And my colleague Sam Harlow worked really closely in fall of 2019 with a public health professor on an online class that had cure elements. There's more we can do as well. If you are interested in getting more information about what services and resources are available from the libraries, please feel free to contact me, Jenny Dale, at jedale2@uncg.edu. You can also contact your department or program liaison by visiting the library website, library.uncg.edu, clicking on Research Guides by Subject, and selecting your department or program from the list to get that liaison's contact information. Of course, we can also support you by connecting you with books, articles, and other resources related to HIPS. Here's an example of a search I did for resources about service learning as a high-impact practice. If you need help or have questions, please feel free to contact me.